Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however, emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Raj Subrameyer. Raj grew up a shy, introverted kid in a conservative family. He spent 20 years living a false identity and because of a trigger event, decided to take control of his life. Raj spent the last 5 years building his business from ground up. Some amazing things that were accomplished were writing a book during the pandemic and moving from an IT training business to a coaching business. Bottom line, Raj has transformed his life into an international keynote speaker, author, tech career strategist, and building a six-figure business on top of all of that. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Raj. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Listeners and people watching, Raj brought up a valid point. We should have been recording the last 30-some minutes. We would have had even more content for you to listen to. We had such an amazing conversation leading up to me hitting the record button, but it's going to be getting even better. So we'll just make sure that we might have to revisit some of the things that Raj and I talked about intentionally and before I hit record. So Raj, one of the things I focus on is a person's origin story. Some people call it, what's your background? You know, where did you get started? I like to know a person's intentional origin from their earliest recollections, from little Raj all the way to big Raj now today. Tell me anything you can think about your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
That's a great question to start with. For me, my childhood experience literally was the backbone of why I'm doing what I'm doing today. So just taking a step back, as you said, I grew up as a shy, introverted kid in a conservative, middle-class South Indian family. So I grew up in a place called Chennai. And for those of you viewing or listening, Chennai is one of the 5 major cities in India where tech and revenue pretty much comes from. And that's where I grew up. From this young age, I developed this inferiority complex that I wasn't good enough because my dad was super smart. He studied on scholarships throughout his life. Then he had my brother, who's a genius. He has 3 masters and a PhD. And there I was, the average kid who didn't do well in anything. You name it, sports, dating, academics. I was average in everything. So if people who are Asians viewing and listening, you will get this, where you're constantly being pushed to be academically successful, and all this constant pressure to stand out from the crowd and be an overachiever like other people around me led me into this shell where I felt like an outcast. I felt no matter what I do, I could never live up to people's expectations. So I developed anxiety, stress, depression at a really, really young age. And this kind of continued throughout my first 19 to 20 years of my life. And then you talked about the trigger event, which was a life-changing moment. And I still remember that moment vividly because I was in my study room and all of a sudden my chest started hurting and the pain was increasing minute by minute. Then I could hear I could feel my eyes tearing up, and then I was crying profusely and uncontrollable tears poured from my eyes. And this continued for 2 hours because I realized that all this while, I was living a life based on other people's opinions. I was letting other people's opinions be my reality. And in the process of not disappointing other people, I was actually disappointing myself. And that's when I decided that, you know what? I've wasted the first 20 years of my life living a life for other people. Now I'm going to start living a life for myself. Screw the society, screw people. You know what? I know I have my talents. I know I have my skill sets. It's just a matter of me figuring out what my passion is, what my purpose is. And that's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to carve my own identity and I'm going to strive for greatness. And that's when the real transformation happened, right? So that's kind of my background story. And the trigger event pretty much set the stage for me to overcome different fears I had. Because on that day when I had the trigger event, I literally took a notepad and a pen, and then I wrote down all my fears. I had fear of being ignored, fear of being judged, fear of public speaking, fear of failure. And on the side of each and every fear, I actually wrote down different strategies which I'm gonna do to overcome those fears. And at the age of 20, even though without even realizing whether those things are going to work, but I just wanted to change. I was just tired of living such a life. And the rest 20, 25 years since then has been this whole journey of overcoming those fears one by one, which eventually led to me transforming my life from a shy introverted kid earning a minimum salary into an international keynote speaker, author, and tech career strategist. So that's kind of the whole backstory of why we are talking here today and why I do what I do on a daily basis.
Well, that's amazing though, because people watching or listening, just think about this. How many of you have had a trigger event in your life where you curl up into a ball, or you get into, those that are loyal listeners, watchers of the show know I talk about this quite often. What is the opposite of the trigger and finding a solution? You turn to addictions, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean addictions aren't always what we, can't always be drugs and alcohol. There's addictions. People get addicted to whatever. It can be television. It could be sappy music.
I had addictions too.
Yeah.
I actually used food as my coping mechanism. And throughout my life, whenever I was emotional, I just kept stuffing myself with food because it gave me a temporary fix. And then till 2016, I was an overweight kid. I was actually 50 pounds heavier. And then on January 1st, 2016, I again decided, you know what? I'm done of being this huge fat kid. And again, I this is just my life. I'm not saying anyone who is big or, are bad. I'm just saying for me, I was tired of being ridiculed for my weight. I was tired of not being able to fit in my clothes. I was tired of using food as my coping mechanism. So January 1st, 2016, I decided I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And then in 6 months, I lost 50 pounds. And since then, I've been keeping it off. So there are two people inside me. One is this guy, the huge kid inside me saying, you know what, you're not good enough. Let's get to food because that's your Band-Aid. Then there's this guy outside who's saying, you know what, I am in control of my actions. You stay in because right now I am in control. So it's this constant struggle, right, which you have to go through. But there's always this trigger event which happens in people's lives. And usually they have two choices. One is when the trigger event happens, you could recognize it and then decide to make a change, or recognize it and choose to just be in the same shell, and that continues throughout your life. Everyone has trigger events. It's just a matter of whether you're recognizing it and then trying to make a change. And luckily, I chose the first option. But unfortunately, a majority of us are scared to take that first step because they think that immediately they have to make this huge change. No, for me, everything started with small steps where you push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, then a little bit, then a little bit, because there's this beauty in getting uncomfortable to become comfortable. And that's what it's all about.
You went through, like, you talked about the fact of being overweight, and you talked about the fact that you emotionally ate, and that's what I talked about. We associate so many things, but the first thing that most people listening will think about, well, you get addicted, it's always drugs and alcohol, but you brought it up. It can be food, it can be It can be even be sex. I know people
Yeah,
that are addicted to so many different things. I know people that are addicted to exercise. And yes, exercise is important, listeners, but you can actually be addicted to it. I know people that are too addicted to being healthy and they're missing the journey of life. So the reason I mentioned that, as Raj went up and down, he had different things that happened in his life that triggered this. He had realizations, as you mentioned, in 2016, decided he needed to stop emotional eating and losing weight. You're not feeling good about yourself, right? It's an emotional thing, but it's also a health thing. So exercise is so important, but even people can be addicted to that. So associations and what we associate in life, like you associated food to comfort, but instead
right.
of being something that satiates and gives you energy so that you can perform and do, that one by one process, that baby steps to move forward. So good for you. It's not easy, listeners. That self-realization, like you talked about your trigger event, I really like that too, where your chest tightened, and I have that same trigger, that anxiety trigger. You cried for a couple hours. You could have pivoted and went any way, but like you said, there's two choices. You recognize and decide to change. You recognize and stay the same. How many times prior to that, though, do you figure you had certain circumstances happen where you could have gone down the road of change, but you didn't? So you had to have had those moments too. So that trigger event was your pressure relief valve, correct?
Exactly. It was this whole bubble which kept, becoming bigger, 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 like a balloon, right? Becomes filled with feelings, becoming bigger, bigger, bigger. And at some point, it's going to lose space. And then it just pops. And then this Pandora box of feelings, just opened up, and then everything came out. So that's what actually happened. And as you said, throughout your life, you always have triggers. It's just about, again, whether you're ready to make the change. And apparently it took me the first 20 years to realize that, when it just became uncontrollable for me, right? But people do not have to go to that extreme. Whenever you see different things happening around you, or you're going through different feelings, recognize it, write it down, figure out, okay, why am I feeling that way, right? And this is a good exercise for anyone who is feeling anxious. This is what I do, because I still suffer through anxiety, depression, but I work out, take medication, and I'm stable, and I do meditation as well, which we can talk about later. But the point is, write down why you're feeling anxious, and then at the side of why you're feeling anxious, write down, can you control it? If the answer is yes, then write down, okay, what are the different things you could do to control that anxiety? In the sense, is there something which you could easily do right now, like finishing up a task which you have been putting out for like 5 months or whatever? But if the answer for that is no, whether you could control some outcome which is causing you that anxiety, then there's no use being anxious because of something which you're not in control of, right? It's just a simple thing. If literally, when you write your thoughts down, a lot of things which are in your mind, when you put it on paper, it becomes visual and it becomes more real. And sometimes some things you cannot control. And yes, it makes you anxious, but then you have to ask yourself, why am I putting myself into this position when I cannot control another person's action or an outcome, right? So that's a rational way of thinking about it. But again, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's better than not doing anything. When you actually write down stuff, then figure out whether you can control it or not control it, then you get a better realization of, okay, now I don't have to be anxious, because I did my
Because
best.
it anchors a person in the present. What is
Exactly.
anxiety? Anxiety is worrying about something, like you said, you have no control. It's the future. And people just don't get it. They don't sit back and they don't study their environments as to what is triggering them to have that anxiety. Well, like what do people do when they're anxious? They worry, right? I
Yep.
tell people all the time, when you worry, you're just torturing yourself twice, because now you're worrying about an unexpected thing that you have no control of, whether or not it's going to happen, or doesn't happen. So you worry up to that point, torture yourself. You have all those anxiety triggers. Then you associate with food, or you associate with television, or you do alcohol, drugs. You do all these things to mask it, or you go to the doctor and they give you a pill. And I'm not against people being medicated, but like you said, you had self-awareness. And once you figured out all this stuff, then you have some medication, you do meditation, you do all this stuff, but people just don't get the fact that it's okay to be anxious, but don't let it consume you, right? How many people today, right now on this planet, every second are being consumed by anxiety and trying to mask all of it, right? So listeners,
Exactly.
just realize Raj is telling you, and I'm telling you, we don't know what day it's going to have that event, like for Raj, that trigger event. I can talk about my trigger events, but we won't get into that. I've had numerous ones throughout my life. Even when I thought things were going great and the little engine it could, I was just giving her, all of a sudden I had another trigger event, and I had to step back and realize, what did I do to get over the last anxiety or the trigger or the depression, right? Sometimes it's the past, it's not the present. And that's what Raj is telling you. You just keep on keeping on. So I appreciate you sharing that. Anything else you like that?
And just to add to what you're saying, I believe based on my experience, being in tech for 17 years, being in leadership roles, now coaching other mid to senior level folks in tech, there are two reasons which increases anxiety, right? One is fear, another is imposter syndrome. And people often have these two things which triggers that anxiety. Let's talk about fear. And so let's talk about fear first, right? So when you try to do something new, you have this fear of failure. What if I fail? But the thing is, you can always experiment with things, analyze it, and take that small step. Then you could study it and then pivot based on that, and then try another experiment. I think life is all about experiment. And when you experiment in calculated small quantities, then the fear which you have can be reduced, because you'll know which one will work, which one won't work. So for example, I started off my business doing technical training, teaching people how to code for 1 year. But then that was not giving me the impact and joy I needed. And then I started writing for different tech companies, thinking writing a blog post, articles, that's what is going to give me, my purpose. That was good, but still I felt something was missing. The third experiment was, I thought, okay, let's just go back to the drawing board. Let's see, what am I good at? And then when I was leading teams, I remembered people saying that, hey, Raj, you have this knack for helping people discover their future career paths, helping them get unstuck in their careers, helping them realize their potential, helping the underdogs who are labeled as society as not good enough to discover themselves, right? And that's when I decided, okay, my third experiment is going to be tech career coaching, and that's what I'm doing. So what I'm trying to say is to reduce that fear, which is the number one component which causes anxiety. Do small experiments, calculated experiments, take calculated risk, take the small steps. That helps to reduce the fear a little bit. And you need to have fear, because if you don't have fear, then you're not going to do shit. That's how it is. And second thing is imposter syndrome. So when people try something new, they feel that they're not good enough to do that. And that is the right way of thinking. Only if you have imposter syndrome, then you're going to put in extra effort to learn things, because in life, there's always going to be something new which you have to learn. For example, we were just talking about this before our podcast, where I make my own t-shirts like this, and then I have my own online store, and I just did it because I wanted to learn the process. And I had this imposter syndrome that I'm not good enough to have an online store. But it was small steps. You have a big goal, say in my case, it was to launch an online store. Divide that into small steps. So first thing is, what type of store you want. Second one is, what platform are you going to use? Third one is, what website are you going to use? Fourth one is, what type of merchandise you want to use? What's the purpose of this merchandise store? So the point is, break it down into small steps, and then you'll be able to make that transition. So to summarize, what I'm trying to say is, you need to have fear and imposter syndrome to grow. And when you try something new, you are going to have that fear and imposter syndrome. And don't label it as a negative thing. Label it as a positive thing, because all the thoughts in our head, we label them as positive or negative, but thoughts are actually neutral. So keep those things in mind, and those are different. Those are ways to view anxiety through a different lens.
Yeah, thoughts are neutral, though. I completely agree because our minds do not know the difference between a truth or a lie. So we have to take the positive side of like you talked about, imposter syndrome. That is so true, though. So you can actually identify the fact that you might have some imposter syndrome. Well, what are you going to do about it? As you mentioned, you went through the stages of creating, doing your store. That's so important. You talked a lot about fear, and fear can be an acronym for so many things, and we need fear to drive us, right? Fear of not having a roof over our head, food in our stomach, stuff like that is going to happen. But I look at fear when I feel fearful. I've been programming and training my brain, because again, our brain doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie, that every time I feel fear, feel fear, I think to myself, it means face everything and rise. Instead of running, which most people do when they're fearful, what do? They retreat. They turn to addictions, as we mentioned. They associate with people that are going to feed them that same sort of negativity. They don't associate with people that are going to uplift them. They don't look for what is the solution for me to raise out of this quicksand that I'm sinking into. So I just tell myself, you're feeling fearful at this moment. So face everything and rise. Don't let it conquer me. So I love what you had to say, that there is only really two things. And you're right. They're pretty much, there's other little subcategories of things that can trigger anxiety, but that's a great start. Again, listeners, reach out to Raj to find out more. It's what he specializes in, is helping people, uplift and climb in life. So Raj, you spent 8 years helping others understand that people are not born as toxic leaders, but that our environment shape who we are. You lived in that world being toxic, thinking that you yourself was a good guy. You came to a realization this was not the case, and that there was no such thing as good or bad guy. However, that each of us are both. Can you please share with the listeners and I exactly what your journey entailed on that road to this discovery, and how is it now shaping the lives of so many?
That's a great question, because that's an important component of who I was and how I'm helping people as well. So just to take a step back, so I'm a tech career strategist. So I help people specifically in the tech space to find their dream job and become successful leaders. So as part of what I do is help mid to senior level folks become better leaders. So that being said, I've been leading teams for the past 9 to 10 years across various industries. And as and when I started getting into these leadership roles, my childhood trauma was still, following me. So what do I mean by that? So when I had this trigger event, I decided that, okay, I'm going to change my life. And one of the things I decided was that I'm going to build up so much fame and credibility that people are going to notice me. No longer people are going to ignore me. They're going to start noticing me, and I'm going to make them notice me, right? I was enraged, and that was my main goal, to build fame and credibility. So what happened was, when I entered the tech space for the first 8 to 9 years, I worked so hard. I pushed myself out of my comfort zone. I said yes to every opportunity that came my way. And I built all this fame and credibility. I was rated star performer in 6 out of my 7 companies. I exponentially increased my salary by over 150% in 10 years. And I had all this, right? But little did I know that all this fame and credibility had made me become into someone who was toxic, and who was exhibiting all these toxic traits which were affecting people around me. And the reason was, when I worked in India, I worked with other leaders in a hierarchical structure, where whenever I questioned things and wanted to make a change or share my ideas, I got reprimanded for it. And this constant experience of working in toxic environments in India made me a toxic leader. So when I started leading teams, all these past trauma of not being listened to had made me involuntarily a toxic leader. So I started doing things like taking credit for other people's work. I started inserting myself into conversations where I knew there was opportunity. Then I was constantly in the lookout for people who are my competitors and try to overtake them. And these were all the things which happened when I got into leadership roles. And then I had to make a change. I had another trigger event from a leadership standpoint, which made me realize who I had become. And again, I have a whole TED talk on this. It's called Confessions of a Toxic Leader. I'm not going to give away everything in this podcast, but you can go check it out. But the point is, coming back to the question, my past experiences working with other toxic leaders made me become one. And then it took forced awareness to realize who I'd become and make the change. And now I help other toxic leaders in the tech space to come out of the closet and take action towards positive change using my own story, right? And it's funny because when this my TED Talk released, no one in the industry actually knew I had this dark past except for my wife and four other people. And then now it has about 90,000 views. So the point is, the point I'm trying to make here is everyone has inner demons, okay? It's up to you to figure out what they are and be aware of it. And everyone has these demons, and they just show up differently in each one of us based on the environments we are in, right? Like, for example, COVID has been really stressful for people, and stress is a huge factor in getting all these toxic traits out of you. And when it comes out of you, it affects other people around you. So you just have to be really cognizant and aware when that happens. And there's always a way to change. And it's never too late to make a change. That is something you want to keep in mind.
Oh yeah, of course, it's never too late to give a heck. That's exactly what I talk about all the time. And the toxicity that is going on in the world today is in all levels. It's not just your tech job. It's people stealing each other's ideas or claiming that they have the de facto standard or the answer to or they're the solution to everything. And they're ego driven. And ego can be good and bad, but unfortunately in our society, it's more prevalent on the bad side than the good side. And, I appreciate you sharing that, because there's so many different things. Like you talked about, you had childhood trauma that you were still hanging on to. I'm in my 50s and I still have some childhood trauma that triggers me, right? No matter how much we realize and analyze it, listeners, and you can realize and write it down, you can document it, it doesn't mean it's not going to creep back in. What it does mean is you better make sure that you have become somewhat bulletproof. It's impossible to be 100% bulletproof, so that you have better associations to people, food, your environment that you're hanging out with, so that when those trigger events happen again, because Raj mentioned they also had another trigger event that happened in regards to leadership. He's now, though, because of prior, has better tools. So the trigger event can still happen. You can still have some anxiety. You can still have some toxicity that's happening around you, or maybe you're the cause of it, but hopefully it can reel you in quicker, so that you're not going through the same journeys and hills and valleys that you're thinking to yourself, well, what am I doing? I'm falling back into that same trap. And then follow the process that you utilize on yourself again. Like, I know myself, I don't know if you've ever felt that way. Some people don't necessarily use this word, but I felt hypocritical. I did a talk that I did here in the fall in the US, and is actually on my website, is about why 2008 was the worst year of my life. Well, it's the same sort of idea. I was a hypocrite. I would have been in the finance circle. I'd been doing financial and lifestyle coaching, but I got comfortable. And all of a sudden I woke up back in quiet desperation where I started years prior. And it was like, I could feel that gripping trigger and my anxiety. And it was like, what the hell's going on? And I had to sit back and think to myself, what have you been doing for your clients all these years? I had to give myself a self-check, right? I had to give myself, I guess, a mental slap and go back down the path of what I knew already worked for others that I had been teaching, but I let myself slide into that comfortable area. You know what I'm talking about.
You mentioned actually two great things which your viewers and listeners should keep in mind, and it's a good thing to keep in mind, is ego and complacency. So let's talk about ego first. Your ego is your worst enemy. So everyone has ego. Everyone wants a feeling of accomplishment, but you always have to evaluate at what cost it is coming at, right? And you need to realize that irrespective of what you do, there are always going to be people above you in terms of success, financial success, personal success, business success, and there are always going to be people below you. Even Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, even he may be thinking about, oh, I want to become like Warren Buffett or someone like that. I'm just randomly giving an example. It's not backed by facts here, but I'm just saying that everyone, at irrespective of what level you are at, you are always going to have people above you and below you in terms of financial, personal, business success, right?
So the answer to that's satisfaction. Be satisfied.
Exactly. So you have to do this constant introspection, which I do periodically to figure out, okay, I'm doing all these things right now. Does it map to my goal? Does it map to my why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? That's a question everyone needs to ask yourself. It's not only for entrepreneurs or people who have their own businesses. Even if you have a 9-to-5 job, you need to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it something which relates to my goal, my personal satisfaction? You need to ask that question, and that really helps to keep your ego under check. There's this great book by Ryan Holiday. It's called Ego is the Enemy. I highly recommend that. He talks about his life as well, and he talks about ego through a different lens, and that was really interesting. So we talked about ego. Second is complacency. Man, I totally get what you're saying, because when you are perceived as this coach or this authority or thought leader in a topic, and you work so hard to maintain that persona and help people, but in that process, sometimes you forget to, again, do this constant introspection of whether you are following the same principles you teach. And you get into this vortex of, complacency. As and when you do stuff, you forget that introspection. And then finally, we end up with this trigger event, which happened in your life in 2008, which happened multiple times in my life. And that's when you have to use this force awareness and this recognition to make sure, you know what, let's get back to where I was, because this is not who I want to be. But you don't have to let it go to that extent, that you don't have to catch it that late. This constant introspection, which you could do, could really help. So what do I mean by constant introspection? And this is what I do. And folks who are watching or listening, you could do this as well. So once a week, or twice or thrice a week, based on how anxious I am, I do what is called a mind dump exercise. And again, if you go to my website, skyrocketyourcareerbook.com, I have templates for everything you can download to do this exercise. But here is a simple way to do it. Literally take a pen and a notepad, okay? Then put a vertical line through the middle of the paper. On the left column, write down all the things you love to do, you want to do, and you want to continue doing. And then on the right side, write down all the things you hate to do, you don't want to do anymore. And do that in an uninterrupted manner, with no Facebook messaging, no text messaging, just let your mind flow. Because this is the thing, folks. All the things you want to do in life, it's right in your mind. You just have to unravel it one by one and make it visual. Human beings are meant to be visual people, okay? And to make things visual, you really need to write it down. And then you can start finding patterns. Say, for example, you've been watching Netflix for 24 hours in a week, or I'm just random examples here. And then you're saying that you would love to work on your side hustle. Okay, then there you're seeing a pattern. Okay, maybe I have to cut my Netflix time and then take those hours and transfer it into my side hustle. So how am I going to do that? Then you start thinking about it, and then go to your calendar and then block time to work on those stuff. And this is what I do repeatedly in the past 7 years, repeatedly, consistently, once a week, twice a week. When you keep doing that, that's when you can keep doing it helps you to do force introspection and why you're doing what you're doing, and also helps to keep your ego in check, to make sure that you are following the principles you preach. And that's a really simple but effective exercise anyone can do. When I say forced self-introspection, this is what I mean, mind dump exercise.
Well, a lot of people don't realize how easy it is. They make it hard. We're, like they always say that saying, we're our own worst enemies. So you talked about the fact of even Jeff Bezos, he might want to be Warren Buffett or whatever the case may be. We need to get to a life where we're not trying to compete with everybody else. You're successful. And I looked at your stuff. I'll use this as an example. I thought to myself, oh, I'd love to, be on a TED Talk stage someday. Your initial response might be jealousy, or you can take that jealousy and you can go, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there myself? And what am I willing to sacrifice? Like fast forward, like I'm encapsulating it, take off the Netflix, put that time into that side hustle so that I can do what Raj has done. I can do that TEDx. Raj isn't better than me. Raj is farther in the journey than me. Raj has had more introspection. Raj has had more self analysis, and he's come to conclusions, or he's put systems in place, and he has better associations. Raj has learned how that he was an emotional leader. He stopped eating as much, got healthier, got into meditation. Instead of hearing all the negative, I went, oh wow, and I'm hearing that in our conversation. What are the things that Dwight can add to his life that can make me level up, climb? Because so many of us in life are camped, Raj. You know that yourself. We're sitting there and we're going, oh, brother-in-law did so well. Look what he's accomplished. And, my best friend's done this co-worker's done this. That's other business. They're exploding. Why am I not exploding? They're taking all that energy and wasting it instead of applying it into something like you talk about, do a mind dump experience. That's a great way. Very simplistic, listeners, people watching. Just write things down. And you know what? One of the things that I have gotten to a really good point of realizing is that, the people that are out there doing more than me, I don't know what's going on behind their door.
Exactly.
Their facade. They could be living a facade. I opened the door and I looked inside. I could be going, I don't want that. They got all this shiny stuff that I see, the facade part of their lives, but I don't know any of the darkness that got them there or that they're still wallowing in. So I live me, the best version of me. And that's all I can do, and associate with great people like you so that I can continue to learn little nuggets of information, because I'm never going to arrive. And I get people going, what do you mean you're never going to arrive? Because I'm going to work on me so that I can serve and help others till the day I die, till I take my last breath, because that to me is thrilling. That is fulfillment. That is not me staying camped. And I've been camped in my life, and I'll never be camped again. And listeners, you don't either, with specific little exercises like doing a mind dump. Lying down the piece of paper, love to do, hate to do. How hard is that? But realize when you do it, listeners and people watching, if you do that, just writing it down and walking away doesn't mean you're going anywhere. What steps are you going to do next? If you're not sure how to do it, reach out to Raj or myself or somebody that can give you that little bit of a mental slap and say, well, that's great. You wrote all this down. Now what? Right? First baby step needs the next baby step, and that next baby step sometimes needs help.
Exactly. And you mentioned a couple of things which I wanted to quickly piggyback on, because I think these are really, really useful nuggets, golden nuggets, which your viewers and listeners can take back and actually implement in their daily lives. So one thing is the journey that matters. It's not the destination. So what do I mean by that? And that also boils down to one of the things you just brought up, which was comparison. You said, yeah, you could compare it with me, you could compare it with your brother-in-law, right? And then you could always view it as a negative thing. But what if you shift your mindset to view it from a positive frame of mind? In fact, my first TEDx talk was called How Comparison Saved My Life. And literally I talked about this because throughout my life, especially my younger self, I was constantly comparing myself to other people. But the mistake I was making was that I was always viewing it through a negative lens, saying, oh man, that person's like this, this person's like this. But I didn't actually shift my mindset in asking that question, okay, why is he or she like this? What are they doing that I'm not doing? What can I replace with my actions, with some of the things I learned from them to get better. And literally I talk about the 3 R's in my talk, and I believe not everyone who wants to level up should actually think about it. First thing is you have to recognize, okay, what are you doing that other people are not doing? Second thing is you have to research, right? And you have to research. Once you recognize that there's something missing, you have to research, okay, that person is doing something which I haven't done, or I've done it differently, which is not working. So research that, what is missing. Third one is replace those good habits which you learn from other people with the ones which are not working for you. And it's a constant cycle, the 3 R's, right? And that helps to view comparison through a positive lens. But that boils down to what I'm trying to say, which is, say, for example, you want to become like this YouTube influencer, or you have this person named, I don't know, John Smith, who has like 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And you want to start a YouTube channel like him to have 1 million subscribers. Okay, so that's your comparison. That's the goal. Okay, so what are the steps you're going to take to do that? Use the 3 R's approach. Okay, and when you're doing a lot of stuff, and then say in 1 year, instead of 1 million subscribers, you have 50,000 subscribers. Does it mean you're a failure? No, because it's the journey which matters. Because in the journey to get that 50,000 subscribers, you have to learn how to make videos on YouTube, how to record videos, how to edit videos, how to do social media marketing, how to become an influencer. And all those things which you learn is going to set you up for success, not only in YouTube. Now you can take those talents and make TikTok videos. You can take those talents, make Instagram videos. You can make those talents and then make videos on your website. See how you started with comparing with the 1 million subscriber person. And then in the journey to become that 1 million subscriber person, even though you didn't become that 1 million subscriber person, you learned a lot of transferable skills. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, you grew
it's
a
a
lot.
journey.
Oh, absolutely. I love how you put that, though, and I've mentioned it, you were talking about it. The destination is what people focus on. And then when they look at somebody, they may not even be focusing on the destination. They're focusing on that result of that person got a brand new car, or they went on this big vacation. Again, like you said, we don't know what they went through to get
story.
Yeah, we don't know the inside story of what it took to get there. So realizing that, I love how you brought up the video thing. That's like we talked about prior to recording. I look at the fact the first time I did a live video, I was sweating. I had the big sweat pouches in the armpits. It was terrifying. And I used to think to myself, oh, look at this person. They get all these views and they get all these comments. And it's really tough even today, a couple of years later, not wanting to more interaction from people watching or commenting. Yeah. Now I don't care. And why don't I care? Because if one person, if I made a difference along that journey, that strengthens me for me to take my next baby step. People don't realize that. Are you celebrating those little wins? The celebration isn't the fact of people watching or liking it. The celebration is that I did it. And like you said, it moved a little bit closer to, use your example, 1 million subscribers. But along the way, I become more confident. And with that confidence, I started a podcast. Along with that podcast, I've done so many more other great things, but it had to start somewhere. So listeners, people watching, you got to start somewhere. You can't expect to get what everybody else has. You don't know their journey. And even if you think you know their journey, you don't know their journey because you're not in their shoes. You need to just do the best version of you, and go back to what you were talking about. Do that mind dump. Change your associations. If you're, like Raj said, spending too many hours on Netflix, take some of that time, put it into your side hustle. There's so many great nuggets of information that him and I have discussed, that Raj has shared. Make sure to listen to this again and take notes. Right.
And a couple of things I want to mention. The great Zig Ziglar, the father of sales. And if people do not know who Zig Ziglar is, you probably want to Google that, and then probably the first 200,000 results is going to be him. But the point is, he said, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Again, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to you have to start to be great. And that's what it boils down to. And before recording this podcast, remember you and I were talking about, it's about the consistency, not the intensity. You have to do the work consistently, even when you're not seeing results. That does not mean you blindly do stuff. It's about doing small things, analyzing it, pivoting, then trying a different approach, then pivoting, trying a different approach. You can work based on data, but it's all about taking that small things. Because this is the thing, folks. I don't think people believe in the power of delayed gratification. So what do I mean by that is, it's not about getting immediate results. A simple example would be, you get a gym membership and within 1 week, you cannot get a six-pack. And again, I'm just using gym as an example. I'm not saying people have to go to the gym, but that's what came to my mind right now. But it's about going to the gym consistently over a period of time where you can become fit, you can have good eating habits, you can become leaner, and a byproduct of that is maybe you get a six-pack abs, right? So the point is, you have to be consistent. You have to do the work, be consistent, and believe in the power of delayed gratification. And as what you said, people in social media post pictures with their Ferraris, Lamborghinis, big bungalows, and vacations, but no one knows the inside story. Maybe they're $200 million in debt, but they're having this false persona because they have millions of followers, or they work their ass off for 20 years to actually get to where they are today. Like your friend who had this, who started podcasting 14 years ago, and it was this small steps which gradually gets amplified, and then you look back in terms of the progress you made. It'll be amazing. And that's what it's all about. Again, it's the journey. It's not the destination.
Absolutely. It's the journey. And, bottom line too, listeners, when you're going through any of the stuff that Raj and I are talking about, you can reach points where things aren't going to work. And one of the things I talk about consistently, and some of the listeners are probably going, oh, not this again. You need to understand that beating yourself up is not going to accomplish absolutely anything. Don't tell yourself ever that you're having a bad day. And I coach on this. It's very simplistic. I will just remind it because there could be people listening, because Raj is my guest. Bottom line, too many people say to themselves negative stuff and they get caught on it. So if you tell yourself I'm having a bad day, what does that do to your mindset? Your mind doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie. So it gravitates and grabs onto that. I'm having a bad day. And all of a sudden, anything good that happened is a wash. Now your gratitude for all the good things or the gratefulness has gone out the window. So here's what I'll tell, and for Raj as well, tell yourself you're having a bad moment and time yourself out. Timing out is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. During the day, I'll shut down my computer. I'll put my phone in do not disturb, and I'll go over and I'll sit on my couch. I'll sit with my dog. Sometimes I'll put on a podcast. I'll listen to one of my audiobooks, or I'll just close my eyes and have a power nap just to do a mindset reset. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Then I wake up refreshed. And if I'm doing that, what I'm talking about, I'm thinking to myself, I'm picking up everything in the last 24 hours. What was good? I'm feeling this way now. Maybe somebody's got upset at me, or I didn't get a result I wanted. What about something I did prior? What was the result there? Oh, that was a great result. Look at that. And then feed off that energy to get myself out of that funk, right? And I give myself a time limit. For me, it's been for years, 3 hours. What? Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of long. No, it's not. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. Sometimes it's an hour, but I set a defined time limit that after that 3 hours, no more little bitch voice, right? No more allowing this, but it's okay, listeners, to have to do a reset. But always remember, through that reset process, be grateful for everything that came up to that point, and never allow yourself to ever tell yourself again that you're having a bad day, ever.
You actually a favor. Bring up a great point. This is another strategy. See, that's why I term myself the tech career strategist, because literally I provide strategies to help people. So similar to the positive self-talk and taking a break and doing things some of the strategies you mentioned to overcome that negative self-talk. Another thing which I do is I have what is called the accomplishment board. So if you look at this is my over here. This is my accomplishment board. So for people who are viewing via YouTube, you would have seen a whiteboard there. So every win, I put that in the whiteboard, which is literally next to me right over here. Whenever I feel like shit, and when I don't want to do anything, when I feel like failure, I just literally turn to my accomplishment board and then see how far I've come, right? That's why you really need to, again, I'm a visual person. So if there's one thing you didn't know about me at the start of this podcast, and now you probably know that I'm a super visual person. My entire house is filled with inspirational quotes, lists and stuff, because I need this constant external motivation and internal motivation to perform at a really high level. It's for me, I'm not doing all these things for other people, but I have to be the best version of myself to be the best version of myself for other people, right? And coming back to the point, so I maintain accomplishment board, and you can have an accomplishment sheet or whatever it is. And every time you have a mini win, write it down and then celebrate it. I'm very bad at celebrating things. So now I force myself to set a timer for 5 minutes and force myself to sit on my chair and then celebrate the win. And whenever you don't feel like doing the work, whenever you don't feel like that you're valuable to people, then look at the accomplishment list. For simple example is in 2020, okay, my speaking, one of the things I do as part of my business, I speak at a lot of events and company private events. And what happened was it came to a zero because all the gigs, everything got canceled because of COVID. But then I pivoted and then I started doing podcast interviews like this. And my goal was to be on 100 podcasts, right, as a guest. And then from 2020 to, I think, mid 2021, that was my goal. And then I looked at my board and I had done only 74 podcasts, right? My first instinct is my negative brain said, see, you didn't reach your goal of 100 podcasts, being a podcast guest on 100 podcasts. But then I had to force myself to reframe my mindset because I've done 74 freaking podcasts. People even in a lifetime do not do that much. So that's the way you have to do that positive self-talk. And the way I was able to do that is because I have an accomplishment board with the list of wins. Starting off every year, it always resets and I just keep adding. So that's one of the strategies. And remember, your actions changes your mood. And again, I go back to the gym analogy because that's part of who I am. I love working out to maintain my mental health and physical health. I hate running. I hate lifting weights, but it's that first step, which is trying to put on your shoes and then touching the dumbbell, right, for the first time that day. And then you get in this flow. So it's your actions can change the mood. Like how you said, you can go take a power nap and come back and then immediately your mood changes. How does that happen magically? That's because you force yourself to take the nap. You force yourself to touch the dumbbell. You force yourself to put on those gym shorts and shoes. So your actions changes the mood. And that's how, when you start slowly doing it, you train your mind to listen to you rather than being the other way around.
Yeah, you're talking all about reframing. You brought that up too. What we're doing, listeners, people watching, we're doing things to reframe our negativity that we can feel ourselves sliding into or beating ourselves up, and then we'll go on to the next topic, but Raj talked about it. You accomplish something and you don't celebrate it. I've been terrible for that. Even if it's just 5 minutes, like he's saying, just celebrate it. It's okay too I have it in the pandemic, it sort of fell off the cliff and I'm going to re-implement it. I have it in a fixed schedule where I take a specific day and a specific block of time where it's not even business related. And I just go celebrate. Guess what? Not business. I celebrate life. I get up every day and I'm grateful for being alive. So it's fine to be grateful for being alive, but what am I doing in the outside world, whether it's going for a walk, a hike, or doing whatever, maybe going to a movie with one of my adult kids or a friend, or just I take that time to celebrate life, because life is in session. This is not a dress rehearsal. I don't know if tomorrow is going to come. So I better learn to celebrate that 5-minute moment or that afternoon moment or whatever. So I love all the great nuggets of information. We could go on and on about that, but I want to discuss a couple more things here before we run out of time. One of the things I wanted to discuss was you're the author of a new book, Skyrocket Your Career, which hit number 5 on the bestseller list when it initially released in 2020. You wrote this book during the pandemic. And I can relate, as I did the same and released mine in 2021, as I had mentioned to you. I know how therapeutic it was to my pivot and change on my entrepreneurship journey. What was the pivotal moment that started you on the path of wanting to write a book and be vulnerable with the world?
So when COVID hit, there was panic all over the world, as we already experienced. But one of the outcomes was people getting laid off in tech companies. So even big companies like Microsoft, Salesforce, Google, Amazon started laying off people. So when people thought, oh, I have this amazing job at Amazon, they thought that, okay, they're secure for life. But COVID taught us that there's no security in this world. There's only opportunity. But the point is, people got laid off and they started contacting me on LinkedIn on March of 2020 saying, hey, Raj, I got laid off. I really need help. I have a family to support. I don't have money. I'm not getting this promotion. I got, demoted. All sorts of questions started coming from LinkedIn. So I started helping people for free, because that was one of the reasons why I do what I do, which was impact people. And now people are in need. So I was helping them throughout the month of March until mid-April. I would have done at least 50 to 60 free sessions with different people. And more than half of them started saying that, dude, because of you, I got the job. Because of you, I got the promotion, even during COVID, the peak of COVID. And they said, this strategy you gave me changed my life. This strategy you gave me really helped my family. This strategy you gave me increased my salary by 30%. That's when I started realizing there's a pattern over here, where a lot of strategies which I'm actually using to help people are helping people. But there are millions of other people who are in the same boat who are not contacting me, but they need these strategies. That's when I had this eureka moment saying, you know what? I need some way to share these strategies to a larger audience. But since the speaking circuit came to a halt, I thought, okay, the next best thing I could do is actually write a book. But but the point was, in midst of all this, I was taking care of my then 5-month-old son from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. because my wife has a full-time job and it was hard to flex. And I was doing 2 group coaching classes. I was helping 8 one-on-one clients. Then I was doing writing work. I was doing consulting work. Where am I going to find time? But then I realized there's never a right time to do anything, because the right time is right now. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to write the book. So every day, starting on April 27th, I wrote the book from 8 p.m. till 9:30 to 10 p.m. every single day. And then I finished writing the book within the first 30 days. But as you know, since you're a published author, people didn't tell me that writing is one thing, but then production of proof editing, then production, cover design is a whole different ballgame. So even though I wrote the book by mid-May, it took until December to release a book. But again, coming back to your question, the idea behind writing the book was triggered by what happened during March and April, where I was helping people. And I thought I have to share these strategies to a larger audience. And that's the story of why and how I wrote my book.
Yeah, you pivoted, and people are tired of that word, but it's a great word. It works. You had different circumstances, opportunities that weren't happening anymore because of the pandemic, your speaking career, but you still wanted to get that information out. You were inundated with all these, like you said, you had coaching calls, you had your one-on-one, you had all these things going on, but you were still feeling that you weren't fulfilling your drive to help others. So you went out and did a book, and you're right, it is a lot of work. I actually hired a publishing company to help me get it out. Still took a while, October 2020, when the whole process started, right toward the end of October, beginning of November 2020, till the book came out beginning of March 2021. There was a lot of, we'll say,
Yeah.
character building moments. There was a lot of character building moments, a little bit of stress going on to get it out. But I wanted to, the same as you, how do I get information out to people? It's a great way to do it. So kudos to you for doing that, and wanting to help people. I like how you stated, though, it's so true. It's simplistic, but people don't think about it. It's never a right time to do anything, right? You can
Yeah,
say
just
that
like
to
getting
yourself.
married.
Yeah,
It's just
just
like
do
getting
it.
married, having babies, or whatever it may be. If you really introspect yourself, and you'll see that majority, 99% of the things you do in life, you'll never have planned it, okay? Because there's never a right time to do anything, because the right time is right now. If you have that inclination of doing something, if you feel okay, there's an opportunity showing up, and if your gut feeling says you need to do it, just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, it doesn't work out. Okay, you can go back to point A and then try something new. So that's what life is about. Like I believe life is about experimentation. And only when you experiment with different things, you're going to figure out different opportunities. For example, in my entire family, in the past 150 years, no one has actually owned a business. When I was born, pretty much I was given 3 options. You can become either a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And this is a thing which happens with Asian folks. And I took the engineering route, and I had a stable job, high-paying job. But then I knew there was something missing. And when I told my parents and my friends and family in India that I'm thinking about, starting a company, they thought I was crazy, because I had a $200,000 job. And why would a person leave that much money to start their own business? That's when you come to a point of realization in terms of why are you doing what you're doing? And we all take life for granted, right? As you were saying. And if you're going to be on this earth, you probably want to impact people. And even if you impact that 1 or 2 people and will really change their lives, I think that's what it's all about. And again, I'm not talking like Dalai Lama here, where I don't take money for anything. Yes, I do charge for my services, but there's a reason why I do what I do, because I know it's for the greater good. I know I'm impacting people. I know I've changed lives. I know every day when I wake up, I'm going to continue doing that. And that's what drives me. That's why I can keep talking like this for like 10 hours. Because when it comes to self-improvement, when it comes to impact, when it comes to strategies, that's what I help people with. And if say this conversation between us two impacted, as you said, even 2 or 3 people, I think we have done our job. Because I think that's why we are born on this earth. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. I believe there's a reason everyone was born on this earth, and everyone has a skill. Everyone has a strength. It's our responsibility to find what that is. And I think our whole life journey is about that. And true to your podcast theme, which is finding your purpose.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, though, is, we could go on and on about all of this and why this has happened and how our society is failing people. But instead of picking away at why it's happened, let's just tell people, you're worthy. You can get out of this. We've gotten out of it, right? We fall back in slumps. We get out of it again. We have different things. Raj has a board. There's nothing wrong with his process. What I do is just time myself out. I have gratitude exercises that I do, which I didn't get into. There's different things that you can do to not let fear grip you. Because that's one thing that's a theme throughout our whole conversation is people let fear drive them, and they become complacent. And then they also use the fact of comparison. They compare themselves of what they haven't accomplished or what they should accomplish. Or like you mentioned, you had 3 choices for careers, right? That your family thought you should do. You're making a couple $100,000, but that's not life. Life isn't, you need money. Like you said, you charge for your services. Raj has gotten used to having a roof over his head and paying his bills and saving for his retirement. But at bottom line, don't define your success based on everybody around you. how many likes they got on social media, how much they make an hour, how much they make a year, what kind of car they drive. What do you want? It's back to that mind dump thing. What do you like? What don't you like? Right? This whole conversation's been phenomenal, how everything ties together. Yeah, we could talk for hours. We could probably have a weekly conversation, just a podcast between you and I, just discussing life and how people can change. But Raj, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Do the work. As simple as that. Show up every day and do the freaking work. Even, especially at times when you don't feel like doing the work, that's when you have to show up and do the work. Doing the work is all that it takes to make that small, gradual transformation from who you are and where you want to be. And a lot of people are in the paralysis and analysis stage, and then they forget to actually do the action. You have to do something to make a change. If you just constantly keep thinking, then you could be in that state forever. So do the work. That's what you need to think about. And again, going back to our conversation, it's all about consistency, not intensity. So whatever you have to do it. Show up every day. Block your time on the calendar. Show up. Keep doing. Even if you don't see immediate results, analyze it, see why you're not seeing results, then pivot, then do it again. Show up. It's like Captain America, right? I'm a huge Marvel, again, a nerd here.
Yeah, me too.
Captain America, when he gets punched, he goes down and then comes back again. Then punches and he goes down, then comes back again. It's all about, everyone gets hit by a curveball, okay, in life, and then it's going to put you to the ground. But the point is, are you ready to, get back up and continue the journey? And that, again, boils down to that one theme, which is do the work. And that's what we need to think about.
Yeah. The biggest thing is our society is going to stay the same as long as people stay complacent, stay on I teach and talk a lot about being on the hamster wheel of life. And so many people are stuck on that hamster wheel because they do try something, they fail, and they shrivel up into a ball. They climb back into the rabbit hole, and they don't realize that they need to look at what caused what happened, dust themselves off, analyze it, start again. Like, look at people like, we'll finish up on this. You look at somebody like Colonel Sanders, 1,100 and some financial institutes until he got financing in his late 60s. For Kentucky Fried Chicken. Or look what Dave Thomas went through, or the list go, with the founder of Wendy's. The list goes on. There's a theme. They never gave up. They didn't let other people's opinions of them become their reality. And listeners, that's exactly what you have to do. Don't let other people's opinions of you become your reality. The only critical information you should take from anybody is somebody that you can look at and you'd like to mimic them. They're very successful. If they give you advice, right, their advice can be helpful for you because they're already been on their journey. They're still on their journey. You see success. Don't take information and advice from broke people. Your broke brother-in-law, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, and I'm not disrespecting them, but if they're not where you want to be in life, they shouldn't be your compass, if that makes sense.
You have to surround yourself with people who can uplift you.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the key. And this is the thing we need to also remember. The world is going to put different labels on us. Okay. You're not good enough. You don't matter. You should do this. This is not right for you. But you are in control of what labels you want to associate yourself with. You can associate yourself with labels like, I'm good enough. I matter. I can carve my own identity. I can strive for greatness. I can find my passion. I can impact people. So when you constantly start associating yourself with positive labels, that's when your mind gets tuned to that as well, because our mind is always in the flight or fright mode. And it tends to go into the negative space, but remember, you are in control of what labels you associate yourself with. You're in control of how you act under different circumstances, because you cannot control the circumstances, but you can control your actions under any circumstances. That's what you need to think about.
Actions and associations are two things you can control all the time, right? Who you're associating with, what actions are you taking to avoid it or to attract it? Because you can have good associations too, listeners. So I appreciate that. So our time is almost up, and I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners what's the best way to reach you?
So there are a couple of ways to reach me. One is through my personal website, which is rajsubra.com, RAJSUBRA.com. There you'll find all my life's work. You'll know how I help people, all the resources, all the articles I write, everything is there on my website, and you can contact me via my personal website. So the second thing is I have my book website, which is skyrocketyourcareerbook.com. There you can download the first chapter of the book for free. And then you can also download a lot of free resources with no obligations. And that's a great way to contact me. But the best way I would say to get immediate attention is LinkedIn. I pretty much live on LinkedIn. So make sure you follow me, because I post inspirational and motivational content every single day. And just connect with me there. And I'd love to meet new people. Love to hear your story, and if possible, love to help you as well. So those are the 3 ways to connect with me and support me as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'll make sure that goes into listeners. Go to giveaheck.com. People watching, you can go and hit the podcast portal button, and you'll see Raj's handsome face, and there'll be abbreviated show notes along with all the links and everything that he talked about to ensure that you have an easy way to reach out to him. Don't sit back and wait another day. Don't say to yourself, there's tomorrow. Do something right now with your life, even as simple as doing the mind dump. Take a piece of paper, do something, just move forward, and you too can live a life on purpose and not by accident. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Raj. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.